Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I am your co-host Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and today we are doing Ryan's final mock draft of the 2023 NFL offseason before the draft. And so, before we get into that, we just want to give a huge shout out to everyone that has subscribed to our channel so far this year. We came into the year with 330 subscribers, and we had a goal of getting to 1,000 by the NFL season. And thanks to you guys, we have already accomplished that and then some. As of Monday night, April 24th, we are sitting at 1,194 subscribers. So, huge thank you to everyone that has subscribed and has enjoyed watching our content, or hasn't enjoyed watching our content, but at least views to see what our opinions are, and then makes fun comments for us. And so, if you have not already, and it's your first time coming to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can see when we release new content. We're going to have a bunch of post-draft content and also preseason content as well leading up into the 2023 NFL season. Be sure to ring the bell so you get notified when we release that content. And also, you'll get notified when Ryan and I go live this Thursday at 6:45 p.m. Central Standard Time for the 2023 NFL Draft. Watch live with us. Provide your comments on what you feel teams should be doing or what they have just done. If you loved it or hated, ask us questions about thoughts on your team, and we will absolutely give you our takes. Also, you can ask us questions about ourselves and which I guess which one's the favorite in our parents' eyes, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
be sure to tune in on our channel at 6:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. And Ryan, let's get to your mock draft.
Let's
Tell everybody kind of what the format is that we are doing.
Yeah, so we are doing a first-round mock draft with trades. So that throws a little bit of wrench into some things. But yeah, and then I'm also approaching it in the way of what I think the teams will do, not necessarily what I would do. And I think there's a little bit of a difference that we'll get into as we make some of the picks. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to share my screen now. All right. And get that set up. All right. And I'm on the clock. So this is probably the worst kept secret in football right now, and that is that the Carolina Panthers like Bryce Young as the number one overall pick. I think everybody's reporting that. There's only been negative things said about CJ Stroud as of late, and I think you look at it, Bryce Young, probably the best prospect in this class, especially the quarterback position. He's just 5'10", 190 pounds. And I think if he were 6'2", 205, it wouldn't even be a question. And so I think the Panthers are going to bet on the slight outlier there with the height and take Bryce Young. So in this mock, Bryce Young goes first overall. There's been a lot of reports that the Texans don't really like CJ Stroud at number 2 and that they really love Will Anderson. And so I'm going to buy into the hype a little bit, and I'm going to have Will Anderson go 2 overall. I think D'Amico Ryans would really like this elite of a pass rusher. I personally really like Will Anderson, but I think you also look at the system that he played in, and it might have benefited him a little bit. Some argue that it might have held him back a little bit because he was doing his job, playing contain in a lot of situations and doing things like that. So it's open to opinion on what you think of Will Anderson. I do still think he's a top 10 pick. I just don't know if I have him on my board at 2 overall, but I think from what we've heard from the Texans that they would be more than happy to take him here. So
I like that you did that because it's already different than mine. And
yeah.
I think that just go check out my mock draft also. And I think that it is like that just goes to show how crazy Thursday's going to be.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. And the chaos, I think, in my opinion, starts at 2. Because like I said, Bryce Young to the Panthers might be the worst kept secret in football at the moment. So chaos starts at 2. At 3, it continues because I have the Las Vegas Raiders trading up, giving up a pretty significant draft haul, in my opinion. They're going to get some back. So they give up 7, 38, 100, and then around 3 next year. And then they get 3 and then 96 and then around 4 next year. So a lot of moving pieces there, but we're going to force that. And then this is where I have CJ Stroud coming off the board. I think you look at what Josh McDaniels wants in a quarterback, and he really wants a pocket passer, right? And I think CJ Stroud is just that. However, I think where Josh McDaniels' offense can really be taken to the next level is when that pocket passer has movement ability. And we saw a little bit of that with Mac Jones in the tail end of Josh McDaniels' tenure in New England. And not that Mac Jones is as athletic as CJ Stroud, but he can move a little. And I think CJ Stroud takes that to another level. He's, in my opinion, the most mechanically sound quarterback in this class. I just think you need to build him up mentally and give him time to learn and develop in a system. And I think Las Vegas is the place for that to happen. So, and then this is where I have Will Levis coming off the board. So 3 quarterbacks in the top 4 picks, but in a little bit of a different order than what I think a lot of people are going to have them in. So it's actually, I take back what I said about Bryce Young. The Colts liking Will Levis might be the worst kept secret of football because they literally sent the entire scouting team, like from entry level scouts to the president of football operations, to Will Levis's pro day. They've met with him multiple times. And so I think they have a draft crush on Will Levis. So,
well, my only rebuttal to that is the Panthers also did that with CJ Stroud. And I think they did that because they know they're not going to get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud most likely.
Yeah, but then it was like the Colts did that with Will Levis and then nobody else. Like they sent a few players out to the other, or a few scouts out to the other players' pro days, but like the entire organization showed up at Will Levis's pro day. So I think they go Levis. I think that's the guy that they like, and they don't have to trade up for him. So I think that's a win for the Colts. At 5, to me, the best player on the board is Jalen Carter. I know the Seahawks don't have a strong history of drafting players with off the field issues. However, Jalen Carter has somewhat addressed those off the field issues already. And I think you look at his talent, and that Georgia defense for the past 2 years has been historically great. And he is the best player of all the players that have been drafted from that Georgia defense. And that type of talent is hard to pass up. And this is a little bit of a bold-ish prediction, but I think he has a Micah Parsons level impact on the defensive side of the ball. And if you have a chance to draft that, I don't see why you wouldn't, even if there's some off the field concerns.
I can see what you're saying where it's worth the risk.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worth the risk.
Yeah. And so next up is the Detroit Lions at 6. I have Devin Witherspoon here. You had the same one. I like it. I think, especially with the Jeff Okudah trade, they're definitely going corner here. To me, it's a coin flip between Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon. I think Devin Witherspoon is a little bit more technically sound, but he's also 5'11", 180, and is a little bit smaller, whereas Christian Gonzalez, I think, needs some slight refinement to his game. But is physically just impeccable. Like, just is outstanding. So next up is the Arizona Cardinals. They traded back from 3 to 7, and this is where I have Tyree Wilson coming off the board. To me, he is just a physical freak, and he did a really good job of speed to power last year, and it's really impressive to see. However, that was kind of his only trick, and it just worked because he's playing in the Big 12. Those tackles are usually not as good as like the SEC, ACC, and Big 10. And so I think he was able to ragdoll them a little bit. And I think he'll be able to bring some of that to the NFL level. However, he needs time to develop. And with Jonathan Gannon coming from Philadelphia to Arizona, and Arizona being in a clear rebuild year with Kyler Murray's torn ACL, I think Tyree Wilson can go there. He can get playing time, but he's also not going to be thrust into this role where he has to be the significant difference maker day one, and he can learn other pass rushing moves. So yeah. And then this is actually where I'm going to have my second trade. I actually have the Atlanta Falcons trading down with the Houston Texans, picking up an early third round pick. This was one I was mocking in a previous draft and in a previous mock draft that I did. And the points add up perfectly. And so it was one of those things. It was like, okay, I think this might be meant to be. And I think the Texans straight up here. And this is where I have Anthony Richardson going. So the Texans, they skip on a quarterback at 2, but they trade back up into the top 10 and get arguably the most athletic quarterback in this entire draft class. So he's going to be a bit of a project, but they do have some quarterbacks that could fill in while while Anthony Richardson gets some development, and then see what happens. So
I like it.
yeah. And then this is where I have Peter Skoronski coming off the board at number 9 to the Chicago Bears. Most technically sound offensive lineman in this class. I just think you look at what he brings to the table. The Chicago Bears, they need solid offensive line play. He can play right tackle. He can play left tackle. He can play anything in between. And that type of offensive line versatility doesn't come around very often, especially at that high of a level. So
Yeah.
I like Peter Skoronski there.
In my mock, I've been, and maybe it's a blindside part as a Falcons fan, but like with Skoronski at 8. But if the Falcons don't take him, and then like let's say they take a defensive player, or if this trade happens, Skoronski to me, because of that versatility, it seemed like the best pick for Chicago.
Yeah. No, I like that one because like you can see tackle, center, and it's like they need just about everything, and so he can also fill in for injuries and be rotated around. So I like that pick a lot. Next up, this is one that in my head just makes so much sense. You look at what the Eagles lost on defense. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson played a really big role for them. Brian Branch is the best safety and by a very, very large margin in this class. And there's not a whole lot of other guys that can do what Brian Branch does in the NFL, let alone in this draft. So I think the Eagles do a little bit of a need pick, but I think he's a really solid player. He's a day one starter for them, and I just like them a lot. So next up is the Tennessee Titans, and they could go Jackson Smith and Jigba here, but I think Mike Vrabel is going to pass on the skill position players and go get the offensive tackle that he needs, and that is Paris Johnson Jr. Plug and play left tackle, probably the best true left tackle in this class, just with his elite physical traits. He needs a little bit of work with his hands as he kind of flails a little at the start of reps. So he resets his hands really well, but you'd like to see him get that initial punch in more consistently. But at 11, I think that's where the Tennessee Titans go. So
I like it.
So next up is your Atlanta Falcons, and I want to hear your thoughts on this pick because I'm going to go with Nolan Smith, the edge rusher out of Georgia. So he's a little bit undersized, but I think if you look at where the Falcons are strong, it's in the center of that defense. They don't really have a true edge rusher. And I think Nolan Smith, even though he's 6'2", 240, he does his best work against the run, in my opinion. He sets a decent edge, but he also is really good at chasing down running backs after they get out of the edge with that 4.39 40. He's the most explosive player in this class if you look at his height, weight, speed. And I think he's a top 15 pick. He's also a locker room leader that I think Arthur Smith would really love.
Even if we took him at 8, it's like maybe it'd be a little high, but at the same time, it's like I tell myself, what's the difference between taking him at 8 or at 12 if we really like him and if he can come in. We've taken edge rushers before that haven't worked out, but it's like they've also had the same level of talent. Like there are other edge rushers that just don't work out. And as you mentioned, all of the attributes that we've seen come from him and his explosiveness and how dominant the Falcons are on the inside with Grady Jarrett. I think he could do really well in that system.
No, yeah, and I really like it. Even though he's 240, I think he helps your guys' run defense, which you guys desperately need. So I like that there. Next up, we're going to go to the Green Bay Packers here, who are now at 13 instead of 15, and I'm going to have them take JSN. So one of the things that a lot of people have said about this wide receiver class is there's not a true blue chip prospect. And I'll slightly disagree with that because I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is uh could have a very big impact in his rookie season, especially if he goes to the right situation. And I think you look at a true pro ready guy, and he is that. Like he
Mhm.
is as pro ready as it gets. To me, he reminds me so much of like a slightly larger Julian Edelman in the fact that he's going to consistently be 100 plus catch guy in the slot. He'll get to 1,000 yards, but he's going to average 8 to 10 yards a catch. He won't be that outside wide receiver. But in today's NFL, you need to have 1, 2, 3 like wide receivers to be competitive. And I think you add him to that wide receiver group, he could be a top 15 production wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
So to me, I think that's well worth the 13th pick. He's far and away my wide receiver one as well. So,
Mhm.
uh, so yeah. And then next, New England Patriots. I'm gonna do the most Bill Belichick thing that there is, and that is trade back in the draft. I'm gonna trade back with the Baltimore Ravens. I'm gonna get a future fourth and a third, give up that, and then the compensatory pick will force that trade. All right. And then this is where I have Christian Gonzalez coming off the board. They need a corner. They lost Marcus Peters. Marlon Humphreys is getting a little older. And so I'm going to get one of the highest rated athletes in this entire draft class at 14 for the Baltimore Ravens. Uh, Christian Gonzalez, I think I said this a little bit earlier. He needs some refinement in his technique, but athletically, he's so good. In he has all the things that you cannot coach. I think he just needs some refinement at the catch point. He's in the right place a lot of times.
Mhm.
So I really like that pick there. And then next up with the Jets, who are now at 15 with the Aaron Rodgers trade, Broderick Jones, most athletic offensive lineman in this class. Uh, he reminds me of Trent Williams in his athletic profile. I think that is his absolute ceiling. But I think he's going to be a top 16 left tackle in the league come year 4 or 5 of his contract, just because I think he needs that time to develop. So I like that there. At 15, I think that's a good investment to make long term. And you get a left tackle or right tackle, depending on where they put him this year, for Aaron Rodgers in this next year or two that he has. So at 16, I'm going to go with Deontay Banks here. I like him a little bit more than Joey Porter Jr., just athletically. I think he's more solid than Joey Porter Jr. He doesn't have the length that Joey Porter Jr. has, but he has an ability to mirror receivers that is really hard to find. And I
Mhm.
like him there a lot. So uh, next up, Steelers at 17. So I know I just said that I like Deontay Banks a little bit more, but only one pick more because Joey Porter Jr., I think, is going to become a Pittsburgh Steeler. I just like it. His dad played there. They need a corner after losing Cam Sutton to the Lions at free agency. So yeah. And then speaking of the Lions here, pick 18. With a lot of the troubles going on with Jamison Williams, I think that wide receiver room could use a few more hands. And so this is where I'm actually going to have Quentin Johnson come off the board. I like him there before Jamison Williams because I think he's going to be put into a role where he's not going to have to be the number one wide receiver right away. They do have 2 first round picks as well. So the redundancy of taking 2 first round wide receivers in a row, I think, is a little bit nullified. But I think if you just look at that wide receiver room, you add him to it, and that offense becomes immediately more scary on top of
Mhm.
the run threat that they already now present with David Montgomery and that offensive line being as good as it is. So yeah, I like that one a lot. And then I have another trade here. So I'm really curious to see what you think of this trade because I'm going to have the Philadelphia Eagles come up, give up 30 and 62 for 19 and 175. And who do you think I'm going to take here?
Bijan.
Yeah, Bijan.
Yeah.
Okay, so one, the Eagles need a running back. And two, if they don't make this trade, they're going to have to face Saquon Barkley and Bijan Robinson 4 times a year. And I know that their defense is good, but that's just something that I don't think any defensive coordinator wants to have to plan for. And I think Howie Roseman does his defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator some justice here and gives them an elite weapon to play with and not have to play against. So, because Jerry Jones has been very vocal that he wants Bijan in Dallas, and I think the Eagles try to rip the rug out from under him. So,
Yeah, and that's what if you look at the Eagle, they absolutely could stick with Kenneth Gainwell, Boston
yeah,
Scott. Then they brought in Rashad Penny, I
yeah,
believe. He was coming off of an injury, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
And Miles Sanders had 1,200 yards last year, and that was with kind of a running back, not like running back by committee, but he was like the leader of the committee. Essentially, Boston Scott took away a lot of touchdowns.
mm-hmm.
Same with Kenneth Gainwell. Bijan can be their number one guy for the next several years to come, like that.
Yeah,
And with this run first offense and having how smart Jalen Hurts is, and how he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league, managing that offense,
yeah,
uh, like that. I mean, like I like that pick. I really like
yeah.
Bijan in that offense, and also too considering how overall weak the NFC is. I mean, like this offense almost seems better now with Bijan back there than Miles Sanders.
Oh yeah, no. To me, I think it's an upgrade by
Yeah.
far. So, and then you'll still get the compensatory pick for losing Miles Sanders in the 2024 draft. So that's
Mm-hmm.
just a whole other game. But let's move on now. Seattle Seahawks. So I had them go Jalen Carter at 5. I'm gonna have them dress the interior on the other side of the ball, and I'm gonna go with John Michael Schmitz. Let's make John Michael Schmitz a top 20 pick. I have loved John Michael Schmitz since this draft process started. He's my highest graded center. And I think you look at him and you look at Osiris Torrance, and I think John Michael Schmitz can be Osiris Torrance, but with a better ability to play center, which is a more valuable position. So I like John Michael Schmitz there at 20. They address the interior on both sides of the ball and start building that up. So yeah. And then next up, I think 21 is where we will start to see a much bigger tick in like the wide receivers that start coming off the board. And I think that's going to start with Jordan Addison here to the Los Angeles Chargers. Keenan Allen is getting older. You talked a little bit about this in your mock, but as the season goes on, I think Keenan Allen might be a little bit more of a trade target come the trade deadline as well. He is getting older and a little bit more injury prone. So I like Jordan Addison here. I think he can play that Keenan Allen role over the middle. And then as well, the Patriots traded back, and I'm going to have them take Zay Flowers before anybody else can get him. They need that speed on the outside, and Zay Flowers is a true 3-level threat. And yeah, I just think this offense needs some dynamism, and he can bring it. So then next up, the Minnesota Vikings, they need a lot. And I think I keep looking at a few of these guys, and I want Dalton Kincaid is the best player on my board left. He's also the best player on this board as well. But they have TJ Hawkinson that they just traded for. And so I think they go to the other side of the ball. And I think Kalijah Cansey comes off here at 23. I think that's just really good value for what they need there. And then going to the Jaguars, this is where I have Osiris Torrance coming off. He's, to me, the next best interior offensive lineman. The Jags need to beef up that interior. They could do it on either side of the ball, but I think Osiris Torrance is a good pick there. So the Giants, I think they're going to miss out on wide receiver in the first round. I do think that there is room for them to maybe move up in the second round. But I think they're going to go with a 2 tight end set with Darren Waller and Dalton Kincaid. They need a pass catcher, and Dalton Kincaid is more of a kind of like Darren Waller, more of a glorified wide receiver than anything else. And so,
yeah, and I like that pick, especially the way your draft is panned out. It is not. I'm trying to even think which receivers are left, but I don't really like them going this early.
Yeah,
is the next one Josh Downs?
Yeah, I think it's Josh Downs.
Yeah, so I just don't like. But Kincaid though, I think adds that.
Yeah,
Obviously still tight end, but if Waller gets hurt, then they can easily replace him
Yeah.
with Kincaid.
Yeah, and one thing too, maybe if they like if they want a different taste than Kincaid, they can go with Michael Mayer. It's kind of a 1A, 1B situation. Because they do have Darren Waller, maybe they go Michael Mayer instead. So
Yeah.
yeah. Next up, Dallas Cowboys. They're going to miss out on Bijan because the Eagles traded up already, but I think it might work out for them in the long run. I'm going to get Lucas Van Ness here. So I'm not as high on Lucas Van Ness because he's a one-trick pony. He rushes in and tries to bully offensive linemen. But I think you look at what Dan Quinn likes to do on defense. I think running stunts and creating movement on that defensive front is going to open up so many lanes for Micah Parsons and Cast to shoot through. And I think Lucas Van Ness fits that system really, really well. So next up, Buffalo Bills. So I'm not in love with the Bills picking here. I think they have a lot that they need. So I'm going to have them trade back with let's go. Here's some Cardinals, 34. We'll do 100 and 168 for 27 and 205. Sure. There. And then the Cardinals, they already drafted Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher. But I'm going to have them double up and get Miles Murphy as well because they need a lot of help. And I think Jonathan Gannon would like to totally rebuild this defensive front. And I think they start with 2 premium edge rushers. I know double dipping at edge in the first round is a little taboo, but I think you're getting 2 immediate starters. You're going to have time to develop them. And these are 2 impact players day one. And for a defense that lacked in pass rush last year, I think that they get a good boost in this class. So next up, Bengals. I'm going to have them take Michael Mayer. I think he's an easy Hayden Hurst replacement. And then for the Saints, I'm actually going to have them take Darnell Wright. I think he can kick into guard and be a pretty nasty mauler at guard. And then when one of their tackles moves on, I think he can kick out to right or left tackle. Lastly, coming to the last couple picks, Buccaneers, they need a lot. Anton Harrison is here to replace Donovan Smith, who they just released. I think that's really good value. And then to me, the Chiefs, they could go a ton of different ways. This is pretty much a luxury pick for them. They could go Josh Downs, the slot receiver, but I'm actually going to go Will McDonald, the edge rusher. I think he's more comparable to Nolan Smith than I think a lot of people are giving him credit for, just because he played in a Big 12 that like moved him around. He took snaps at like a nose tackle and then like a middle linebacker and then everything in between. So I think that's a lot of like, it's a lot of confusion on tape and it's a lot of chaos. And I think it's hard to evaluate. And so I think he falls because of that. So,
okay.
So yeah.
I like it. I absolutely love how different both of our drafts are.
Oh yeah.
Because as I said,
they're very different.
As I said already, it's yours had a lot more chaos in it, while mine I think was pretty rudimentary.
Yeah.
Like yours was if when players loved a guy, like they went and go get him, and I think that could absolutely happen because there are a lot of question marks, and it just depends on how these teams are going to view these players. And I think just a good indicator, as I've already said, how unknown and suspicious this Thursday is going to be. No one has any idea what is going to happen after the Panthers pick.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, every single time I've done a mock draft, it has been very different.
Yeah.
And so it's so hard to try and be like, well, I think this player is going to be a good fit here, because I can also be like, well, he's a really good fit at 6 other teams who are picking relatively soon. And so I I don't know. There's just so many different things that could happen. This mock draft. I did it earlier today and then did it again. This is one of my more favorite ones. The only thing that I might change is the Buffalo Bills pick at 27.
Mm-hmm.
I think they trade back with somebody just because I don't think that there's anything that they really need or anybody that really fits what they need at 27. So I think they can trade back and then accumulate more picks.
Yeah.
Whether that's with the Cardinals or not, I don't know. I just think the Cardinals, they're going to want to invest heavy in that defensive line. There wasn't a whole lot of defensive interior guys left. And I really liked Miles Murphy and Tyree Wilson in that system. They're very similar players, but I think they can both play on different sides.
So the guy I like there, and it's a fair point, but to me, I do think we are going to see a linebacker go in the first round. And I say that just because if you look at those teams right there, even the Eagles, let's say they don't trade up and get Bijan, but they stay there. I think Jack Campbell's kind of solidified himself. It seems like as the number one linebacker. Yeah. I think he could fit well in Buffalo. I think he could fit well in Philadelphia. Maybe even the Chiefs can take him as well at linebacker. And so they took Nick Bolton 2 years ago.
Nick Bolton and Willie Gay. Second and third year players.
Maybe not Kansas City then. But the Saints also lost Caden Ellis, and so I think he has a good potential. Anyways, I say that I could see the Bills also taking him there as well. That's about, I think, as early as I could see Jack Campbell go. But I can also see he's probably going to go somewhere in the 30s to early 40s. That's going to be kind of his range. But that being said, though, I don't dislike Miles Murphy there. Maybe if Jalen Carter falls and then the same trade happens, the Cardinals take Carter at 7 instead.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And then another one that I just thought of too, Maisie Smith at 27 could also work. But that's the only one that I look at and I'm like, man, I really don't like that. Or like not that I don't like it, but I'm like, man, like maybe that's probably the most unrealistic situation.
Yeah.
And it's hard because there's so many possibilities.
Another one too, and shoot, we could do a whole separate video where we like dissect each one. But another one that comes to my mind is 11 with Tennessee. Is they did sign Andre Dillard in the offseason, and right now at slot receiver they have Kyle Phillips. Like they don't really have anybody at receiver. Nick Westbrook-Akine is their number 2 receiver, and he's a good role player, but he's not going to be able to help carry the team with Treylon Burks at the receiver position. So I can maybe see them going JS in there as I think he can fit and slot in. But that also being said, though, it's like you make great points about Paris Johnson Jr. Like they could also go there. They also lost Taylor Lewan as well. So it just goes back. Anything can happen. There's going to be so many changes.
You cut out.
Oh, sorry. Anything can happen on this Thursday. Yeah. I'm so looking forward to it. It's going to be it's going to be a phenomenal time, and I'm looking forward for all of our subscribers to be joining us.
Oh yeah, no, it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's go ahead. Let's wrap up this mock draft here. Again, like Tyler said, we are going live this Thursday, April 27th at 7:45 Eastern to give you guys live coverage of the NFL draft. Go ahead and go over to our channel, hit that bell so you get notified when we go live. And yeah, other than that, we will see you guys next time.